Hi there, welcome back to our yoga live channel and to our coaching classes. Today I've got a really interesting model for you that's about 40 years old by a gentleman called Stephen Karpman, who was looking to develop a model that explains social interactions and explains how conflict plays out, especially in relationship and often in relationship triangles. It's called the drama cycle. And it can help you make sense of difficult relationships that you have, especially if you fall into the same pattern with people over and over and over again. It's pretty much a triangle between the victim in the interaction, the rescuer, and the perpetrator or blamer. And these different roles can be actually interchangeable. So people who are in those kind of relationships can take different roles within the social scenario at different times. Now, one important distinction is we are here not talking about victims of abuse, about victims of major bad stuff that has happened to them. We're talking about people who are putting themselves in the role of poor me victim. So please, that distinction, don't think I'm talking about people, for example, after a scenario of rape and them having some sort of unresourceful behavior. That's a very different story. It's a very different type of victim. So don't mix one with the other. Okay, let's have a look. The first person on this triangle is the victim. The victim lives in the idea of poor me. They are kind of devoid of power. They are in a situation where they feel helpless and hopeless and needy, dependent on other people, and at the same time they are frustrated often with their own dependency and are therefore unappreciative of other people trying to help them. So somebody tells them, oh, you could do this, you could do that, you could, go out, try to find a job. They will actually often start and be reactive and be upset with them for trying to make them, kind of from that position of you don't understand what it's like, you don't know, you haven't walked a mile on my shoes, sort of thing. And what they really want at this point is they want to be rescued. They want for someone else or some external force to come and take care of them. The next person here is then the rescuer. And those two have quite a cushy, cozy sort of relationship with each other. The victim is the person who needs to be taken care of, and conveniently the rescuer is able to step up, sweep in, and be the good person who's able to take care of them. They are always coming with the attitude of, I'm here to help. Now, if you look around in your community, especially if you're involved with community work, in a church, in a temple, in, I don't know, community gardens, or in a school or so, I bet you at least have one person right away in your mind who is that kind of person, who is the kind of rescuer, who always swoops in to help everyone. It's like the ones that always put their hands up first to volunteer. And the interesting thing is with them is that there's actually a bit of an agenda, which is sometimes why it's uncomfortable actually accepting help from those kind of people, because there is this sense of self-worth almost that they are deriving out of being the person who is able to help, and they need to constantly hear acknowledgement. They want to be seen to be doing good, and the convenient thing for the rescuer is that they often have quite a lot of issues of their own, but because they find themselves a victim or a bunch of victims, they are then able to put that to the side and go help the victims instead, and up their own status and up their own standing in the community. They are in that way then neglecting their own needs. They're also neglecting cleaning up under their own carpet and looking at the stuff that they actually really need to look at in their life. And in that sort of interaction with the victim are enabling the victim to keep going with their unhealthy, not willing to step up sort of behavior, and are therefore in a situation where they might be becoming codependent. Now, The third person in that triangle, we have the victim, we have the rescuer, is the perpetrator, who is also sometimes called the blamer. That's usually the angry dad kind of person. And we'll look later at a couple of examples of how this can play out. He is the person who comes in and says, it's all your fault. You are the one who is doing all the wrong, and has this really angry, righteous stance of this is how things should be done, and you guys are pretty much all idiots because you don't get it together. He blames, he shames other people, and interestingly enough, there is often a layer of protective skin almost, because the blamer, the perpetrator, is protecting their own shame and their own feeling of not good enough by putting it all on someone else and conveniently outsourcing those bad feelings. It's often a very dominant and very angry kind of energy, and it's like a power over type personality, but in a very unresourceful way. So the blamer, the perpetrator, will not really be there to resolve anything, to actually make the situation better. It's just seeing what's going on and what's not functioning right, and then getting angry and righteously pointing out everything that's wrong with everybody else, which then allows them, of course, to be standing in their righteousness and in their feeling good about themselves and having it all together. So they are strong, and they are not willing to be really vulnerable. So now, what do these three personalities on the triangle get out of their behavior? That's an interesting one. The victim gets to stay in this helpless and hopeless position of, I can't do anything by myself. They get to deny their power. They don't have to step up and do anything, and they get taken care of. So it's like the forever babied person, the forever childlike position of, I need someone else to do things for me, I can't. The rescuer has this beautiful position of feeling needed. So they have a purpose in life. Their life might otherwise be quite empty and quite dysfunctional themselves, but because now there's suddenly someone who is weaker than them or who's less than, they get to feel good about themselves and they get to avoid their own issues. What about the blamer, the perpetrator? He can feel superior. He feels he is righteous, he has all the tools, he is the one who knows everything, and he feels he is better than everyone else. Also quite convenient stance. So they are all in the different position, getting something out of it. But what needs to happen? If we want to break those cycles, what do the different roles that we are playing need to take on and need to take on board? First of all, they pretty much all have to step up and become proper adults, because they are all in their own way behaving in a somewhat childish and dysfunctional way. So what would the adult stage for those different people look like? The victim needs to grow up and needs to take responsibility, needs to stop pretending that they don't have power, needs to stop kind of sitting there, poor me, pitying themselves, and needs to get their ass off the chair and get moving, and if necessary, find a job, find their own place. It's often those kids that still live at home in their 30s or 40s, needs to get out and take charge of their own life. Up until then, up until they do that, they will always be obviously babied around because nobody is taking them serious. And why would anyone? Because they are, frankly, even if they don't like hearing it, a burden to everyone else. They are leaning back, not taking responsibility, so someone else has to constantly push. Everyone who's ever parented a teenager knows what I'm talking about. A rescuer, what does the rescuer need to do to get out of their unhealthy side of things? They, first of all, need to acknowledge their own motivations in the role. Because what they might be doing is obviously outsourcing everything that's dysfunctional to the victim and go, well, I'm the one here for you, I'm doing everything. And it can come to the point where, for example, that elderly mother that has always done everything will then say, after everything I have done for you, now this is the way you are treating me. Well, I hate to break it to you, but if you are coming in rescuing others, helping others, but with an agenda of getting something for yourself, you're actually not really truly serving them. You're enabling them, but you're keeping them perpetually in this position of weakness. What you need to start doing, if you recognize yourself here, is you need to step away and empower rather than enable. And this often can mean tough love. It can mean telling the other person it's time to move out. It can mean stopping to fund their whims and pay for their rent, their studies, etc., and get them to go get a bloody job and step up. And then rather than you being upset that they don't reciprocate and now take care of you, you can actually do what you need to do and take care of yourself. So that's a really important part in stepping up. So not only are you empowering the other person, ultimately you're freeing up your own time to clean up your own act, and then empowering yourself to actually make the time and think about what it is that you want to be doing, what it is that you need, and get taken care of in a proper way by yourself, by taking responsibility for yourself rather than looking everywhere else for the solutions. What about the blamer? The blamer, the perpetrator, actually often has a more difficult role because they have gotten really comfortable in being the strong one and the functional one and the one who has it all together. It's much easier to point fingers at everybody else than taking responsibility for your own life. So what the perpetrator needs to do is they need to start self-reflecting and get in touch with their own vulnerability. It's often a person who might have been bullied earlier and have lived as a victim for a longer period of time and now need to see that becoming the bully themselves and being tougher, being harder, being stronger is also not the answer to living a really happy and balanced life. So if at some point you were so weak and vulnerable and you were kind of despising that and therefore have created this really strong, hard, non-feeling persona, it's time to look within and find a way of bringing those two together in a balanced and healthy way. And for example, reading books by Brené Brown, who does an immense research about vulnerability and the power that lies within being able and allowing yourself to step into your own vulnerability, can be a really good start to gain that level of self-awareness and stop rejecting vulnerability, both in yourself and others, and start seeing how being in touch with yourself can actually serve yourself. And strength doesn't have to be derived only from being powerful in such a rigid way, but can come from flexibility and also from acknowledging that you have needs too and that you have a softness inside as well. The other thing you need to develop if you are that perpetrator is empathy for others, because it's not all about you and there's not just one way of doing things. So this is your homework for yourself. So now, what are scenarios where these things are playing out? I bet if you've been listening up until this point, you've already identified a few cases in your life where this is actually playing out. I can tell you, for example, in families, it's a really normal, standard kind of way. And what we need to do is step away from it and become the observer of the whole scenario to be able to then do something different other than stepping into our accustomed roles. So for example, parenting teenagers, so much fun. You have the victim, you have, for example, the teenager is supposed to do chores. The teenager doesn't want to do chores. And of course, I'm absolutely not speaking of experience here. They don't want to do chores. So one parent will come up, probably the dad, if it's still a family of three, will come up and put their foot down and be really harsh and go, you are going and doing those chores right now. You will do the washing up. You clean that toilet that you've made a mess in, whatever it is, right? And will be angry. Now, if you have bad luck and you have such a triangle situation, the other parent, the softy mom might come in and say, oh, leave him alone. The poor thing has been at school all day. He's had a really hard day. He just came back with like a not so good mark, etc. Leave him alone, he can do it later, or I'll do it for him. So boom, there you have it. The mum steps in as the rescuer. The father gets probably even angrier, not only at the son now, but also for the mum at the mom for undermining him, and the son can step in and go, oh, where he actually was the perpetrator initially, the son, because he wasn't doing what he was supposed to be doing and being selfish about it. Now the kid can step back and be all victim and go like, dad has been so mean to me, I've had such a hard day. So in any of those roles, you are perpetuating this really unhealthy and quite frustrating cycle. If you're the kid, get your bloody bum off the seat and ask what you're told, do what you're asked to be doing. If you're not doing it right away, do it later, but don't come 3 days later if you've been reminded 10 times. Again, I'm not talking from my own experience. If you've been reminded 10 times, don't come complaining if at some point one of your parents steps in angry and puts you on the spot about doing it right now, even if you have to, interrupt your computer gaming or your texting on social media. If you are in the position of that softy parent, the mom, the dad, there's different ones of us, stop enabling that behavior. Put them on the spot and hold your kid accountable. They are old enough to step up and do little chores. They can do that at any point in time, but rather than you doing it for them and then complaining later and harboring resentment somewhere deep down, you actually just need to make sure that the kid does it, even if they don't like it. And the dad, or actually probably also the mom, the angry parent, the perpetrator, you have to step away from this loud, angry, raging sort of behavior. And again, step into enough compassion to see that right now might not be a good time if the kid indeed has just come home and is exhausted. Ask at a more resourceful time and probably put systems in place so that those things get taken care of more regularly, and also start communicating with the other parent so that you both together can be a united front and support each other rather than undermining each other's parenting. And that requires communication, and it requires a level of empathy and not just self-righteousness. So that's for parenting. How about in other relationships? For example, somebody recently asked me about relationship where there's cheating involved. That can happen as well. And funny enough, it can actually happen the whole triangle between just two persons. So, for example, wife finds out that husband has been cheating. Now, I'm not a relationship advisor, so I'm not going to tell you, you should leave, you should stay, or anything like this. But how could the scenario likely play out? The wife feels as the victim, is teary, is upset, is angry. They might have a conversation, and the partner might actually stop in his tracks and become angry and go, well, you made me. You've not been wanting to be intimate with me for weeks or for months. You haven't been taking care of me, etc. So he might be in an angry role. She might then also become defensive and step into her own anger because enough is enough, and start blaming him for his behavior and how he's not caring, how he's not kind. He might then jump into the victim role and start explaining himself. Well, how could I have acted differently? You're not taking care of me anymore. I don't feel loved and nurtured the way that you did. And then she might jump over when he's becoming more soft and more in touch with his feelings and being in the victim position, and might rescue him and might go like, yes, but I love you and I care about you. And of course I want us to be together, and you just have to be more emotionally available. So she, rather than holding him accountable for his behavior, she then rescues and enables that behavior. So they might enter a honeymoon phase, be closer, be more intimate again, feel good with each other, until quite likely it's going to happen again sooner or later, because nothing, if it just ends up in this cycle, has been properly removed. If you're in a scenario like this, you might want to get yourself some help. You might go and see a relationship counselor together. You might evaluate where you stand in this relationship and whether you want to perpetuate it. If it happens once, okay, stuff can be forgiven, there can be good reasons. If it happens twice, start watching out. If it happens more than twice, if you're staying in it and if you keep playing the same game, you can't really blame the other person. It's a choice of you being where you are. Yes, and of course there might be relationship where there is heavy abuse going on, or for financial reasons you can't leave, for religious, for spiritual reasons you cannot leave the relationship. That's obviously not my point to judge here. You have to know. But you can see that there's ways out of this triangle system, out of this drama cycle, where you actually stepping away from the drama and moving into the observer position, seeing what's really going on there on the ground, and how you can step in and do something different rather than perpetuating the cycle over and over again. So, I trust this has been interesting and you have learned a thing or two about your relationships. I hope you can go out and apply it, share it with others. This is a video that might be valuable for other people to see. And if you like our content, hit the bell so that you get notified when our next content comes out, and subscribe to our channel so you find always out more what's going on here. And if you're happy to, leave us a comment in the comment section and tell us about where you have been standing and how you have managed to step away from drama and step up in your own life to the benefit of yours and other people around. Thanks for watching. Have a lovely day.